I'm the Regional Arts Director for Wider Europe at the British Council, and I am so pleased to welcome you all to our Growth Reimagined forum on the future of the creative economy. I'm very happy to have those of you who are in the room here with us in Kotor. Apologies for bringing the rain from the UK, and to the many more who are joining us online already. We have a brilliant lineup for you today. I hope you've all seen on the program a fantastic lineup of speakers from the UK, from the Western Balkans, and from the rest of the wider Europe region. All experts on the creative economy, and we hope that you will have fantastic networking here and lots of ideas will come out of the forum. We are joined today by several speakers who will open the forum. So I will introduce first of all to those. Unfortunately, the Minister of Culture for Albania is for Montenegro is currently held up in traffic, but we will welcome her when she joins. So for the moment, I would like to welcome Kate Ewart-Biggs, who is the Deputy Chief Executive for the British Council.
Morning, everybody. It's a huge pleasure to be here from the UK. So I'm the Deputy CEO of the British Council globally, and I've come especially to Kotor today to open the British Council's Growth Reimagined forum on the creative economy. And our huge apologies for bringing the rain. It's actually really nice weather in London, so I'm sorry, I've sort of brought it with me. But a huge warm welcome to delegates in the room and also those online. And we're really honoured to also be joined by so many experts from across the UK, the Western Balkans, Central Asia, South Caucasus, Turkey, Ukraine, and beyond. What an amazing group of people that we've got in the room today. The British Council's Global Creative Economy programme works in over 100 countries, and really its main aim is to support inclusive, resilient, and future-facing creative ecosystems. We collaborate with cultural leaders, with governments, with institutions to design interventions that respond very much to local needs, whether that's through leadership development, research, policy reform, or really practical enterprise skills training that is so needed across the sector. Because we recognise that the creative economy is one of the fastest growing sectors worldwide, set to create millions and millions and millions of new jobs globally by 2030. So Growth Reimagined is our theme for today, exploring a fundamental shift from simply economic growth to a more inclusive, sustainable, growth driven by people's creativity. The UK was, in fact, the first country to define the creative industries. And over 25 years later, I'm really proud that the creative economy continues to strengthen the UK's standing on a global stage at a time more necessary than ever in our history. I heard firsthand yesterday from ministers of culture from across all of the 6 Western Balkan countries how they link the importance of their creative sectors to a wider social and economic development. Because I know that the creative economy is a critical agenda across wider Europe, and where the British Council has played a really critical role in sharing UK experience, but also learning from the experience that is developing. And today, in today's forum, we have, amongst others, brilliant case studies from policymakers, academics, and sector leaders in Georgia, Kazakhstan, Turkey, and Ukraine. So I really hope that you have a fascinating day ahead, sharing your own insights and concepts for how we can all support and develop the creative economy in all of your contexts and in our context in the UK. The event is in collaboration with Beyond Pseudo from the UK and the SIM Forum here in Montenegro. So I extend a huge thank you to them from the British Council for all our collaboration. The British Council always works in partnerships with organisations, with partners, with governments, institutions, locally and from the UK. So this is a really good example of that. Growth Reimagined invites us all to think about how our economies develop in new ways, to develop and explore models that prioritise local value and long-term approaches to prosperity and well-being. And because the British Council is here for the long term, we have been in existence for 90 years and will continue to develop and be fully committed to supporting ideas and partnerships that have emerged from today's forum in order to really continue to strengthen the real power of the creative economy in the world today. So thank you for being here. I really hope you enjoyed today, and I'm so looking forward to hearing all the insights that you bring from your respective contexts. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kate. And I could please introduce Dawn McKen, the British Ambassador to Montenegro.
So I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm delighted that the British Council's Growth Reimagined Forum is happening in Kotor. As a representative of the UK government and as a diplomat, I am in awe of two things. I'm in awe of the skills and mindset that you have, people have in this audience, that I don't have myself. But I also recognise the value of what you bring, your ideas, your thinking and your collaboration to not just the UK, but also globally. So I'm glad you're here. I'm sure this will be a terrific event. I just want to say a few words about, I suppose, how I see it as a representative of the UK government, how I see the importance of the creative economy. For us, it's a key driver of soft power, and it's a key driver of trade. It makes a substantial contribution to the UK economy, and it's one of the 8 pillars of this government's new industrial strategy. So its importance is recognised as it should be. In 2023, in the UK, the creative economy delivered £124 billion a year in gross value added. So that's the equivalent of 5.2% of the gross value added of the whole of the UK economy. It employs 2.4 million people. That's 7% of all UK jobs. Some of you may know this, but I think these are surprising figures to some people who are outside of the area you work in. And since 2010, the creative industries in the UK have expanded by over 50%. It's a growth area for us. It's a dynamic area for us. But while the economic statistics are impressive and very important today, the power of the creative economy is so much more than that. It supports inclusive growth, employment, diversification, and it shapes and reflects cultural identities. And this, for me, is why working with Montenegro, working with the region, and working with the wider region is so important. The creative industries here are a vital part of how this country and this region tells its story on the global stage. And so we were very pleased to host the first Culture Ministers meeting as part of the Berlin process yesterday, and I'm very pleased to see this meeting happening in wonderful Kotor today. I'd like to express my thanks to the Sim Forum team for hosting us today, and also wish you all the best of luck for the forum ahead. And I'm sure you will have a constructive and stimulating day, because you're the kind of people who will want to have a constructive and stimulating day and not just go through the motions of being at a conference. As is sometimes my experience, I have to be honest, but I don't think that will be what happens today. And I look forward to continuing this area of collaboration in Montenegro, in the region, and more widely, because I think it's very important to the UK, and I think it's very important more widely to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both Kate and Dawn. I know you may need to get on with the rest of your program, so thank you for being with us, and I hope you'll get the chance to meet with some of the rest of the delegates over the course of the day. I'll just give a little bit of a look ahead to the themes that we'll be looking at in the forum today. If we could just move the slide on, great. The morning session is really looking at the topic of policy making. So what are the foundations for the concept of the creative economy, the story from the UK and across the region? So we will have case studies from the UK, from wider Europe, and a panel looking at particularly around measuring impact. So that will be the focus of this morning session, taking us through to the coffee break. I just also wanted to say before we delve in terms of just any practicalities today in the room, we're not expecting any fire drills or anything like that, but if needed, those of us who are in the room follow the fire exits here and at the back where you came in. Any problems, please do let a member of the British Council or the SIM volunteers team know if there's any issues today, just to get housekeeping out of the way. So without further ado, I think we will move on to our first session. So if we could move forward the program. And I would like to welcome Professor Andrew Chitty, Professor of Creativity and Innovation at Loughborough University in London and De Montfort University. Andrew, welcome.
Thanks, Claire. Look, it's lovely to be here. I've got 10 minutes to try and talk about the creative economy of the UK. So this may be more like an animation than a set of slides. Although this session's about policy and advocacy, that's not my background. I'm a producer who strayed into this area of policy from a kind of industrial perspective and trying to argue with government about the fate of the creative industries, or the particular sector I worked in. So, as I think a previous two speakers, I think Kate said, it's more than 25 years since the creative industries became a term of policy in the UK, and I wouldn't dream of trying to map out how that happened, since some of the people in the room were actually involved in it right at the start. But since that point, it's become a familiar policy instrument internationally. So this idea of the creative industries, that there's an industrial sector that's concerned with creativity, has been picked up across Europe, globally, in South America with the idea of the orange economy. I'm sure there are people who understand why the orange economy is the orange economy. And recently, even in India as well, this was a report published by my research group with UKRI and the Indian research partners on mapping the creative industries in India. So I'm going to say that there's a few things that mark out the success of this policy and advocacy in the UK. I think the first thing is the recognition of the sector. Then we've got analysing the sector, understanding data about the sector, branding the sector, so making that part of the marketing of the UK has become very important in policy terms. And I think what I'll try and get to at the end is that the more recent understanding of the creative industries as a sector of innovation and the new creative growth sectors that come from that, and creativity's entanglement with technology. So recognition and analysing the sector. So this was really, really important. Again, previous speakers have talked about the size of the UK creative economy, but to understand, to make the argument that the creative industries were important economically to the UK meant collecting data on it and meant communicating that data. So there was a part of this success, so this is just before the COVID pandemic, were these rather jazzy graphics which presented both the different sectors that make up the creative industry and encapsulate the economic numbers about them. And this sector is very large in the UK. So for my colleagues who work in innovation, I am notorious for saying, look, we invest in life sciences, aerospace, green energy and oil and gas. They seem the things you invest in terms of research. Creative industries is bigger in the UK than all of those put together. So an important point about advocating is using the numbers. And one of the things that came out in that is this understanding over the last, I suppose, 20 years that this sector has expanded at twice the rate of the rest of the UK economy. Now, that may well reflect on the rest of the UK economy, as well as the creative industries. But again, it becomes important if you're articulating an argument about growth, if you can say that your sector, which other people might think is, optional or a luxury, is actually twice as fast growing, and also involves a lot of jobs. So we're talking about 6-7% of the UK economy, about 2 million people working in the creative industries and working creative professions in other industries. And also it became increasingly important to the UK to understand that this sector contributed to growth in exports. And this, you can see this is led in the UK sense by some of those biggest sectors. So IT, software and games, advertising, film and TV. Again, these are pre-pandemic figures. The sector in the UK took a big hit in the pandemic, but has recovered substantially since then. And this allowed, I think then, when the UK started to think about how to market itself internationally, which is not something that we're particularly good at, I think, in the past, is that creativity then became part of this UK branding, whether it was based on individuals, so Thomas Heatherwick and his studio's Expo Shanghai Pavilion, or whether it was iconic bits of IP like Harry Potter, or combinations of IP and location, like Game of Thrones. Suddenly we were starting to see, or probably not suddenly, but gradually in the 2010s and more recently, that the idea of the UK as a creative nation, which was, I think, the original Australian policy document in the creative industries, becomes again an important point of the story of the UK and binding the creative industries into this story of growth. Now, that's really the story, I think, of the UK creative industries from, say, 2000 to 2015. More recently, there's become another story. So with the creation in 2017 of an industrial strategy for the UK, the creative industries became recognised as one of the core sectors of the UK economy. So 6 sectors in that strategy, 8 sectors in the current government. So on a par with those more famous sectors. But for the first time, this allowed us to make the argument that the creative industries is a very powerful sector for innovation, both innovation within its own sector and externally. So that allowed us, for the first time, to encourage large-scale R&D programs to support the creative industries, and particularly the transformation of the creative industries through advanced computing technologies that at the time seemed to be built around XR and real-time technologies, and obviously more recently, as with every other sector of the economy, are themselves affected by AI. So this, I think, whether it's in, sorry, that was, so this allowed us to do large-scale demonstrators, research demonstrators, bringing together companies, in this case the Royal Shakespeare Company, famous performance company in the UK, with technologists, and started to enable our universities to get engaged with the idea of applied creative research. So creative research for the creative industries, not about them, for the very first time. Now, I think this is a very powerful, newish development in the UK, and probably is encapsulated best by the engagement between the screen sectors and the technology sectors in the stack of technologies around virtual production. Again, this is not something I'm going to talk about here because we have a panel that has some of the most well-known exponents of this trend, this transformation of production, later this afternoon. I'll skip that slide. So I think one of the things that the policy around innovation enabled was for the first time a kind of integrated approach to sector development in the UK. So this is a creative industry sector vision produced under the last government, which brought together all of the growth strategies around the creative industries, including innovation. And there are delegates here from the UK who are involved in what will become the sector plan, so the new government's version of this. Now, in that sector vision, one of the things that it advocated or it announced was a large-scale program called Kotor, which for the first time tried to, it supported the idea of research laboratories, so university-governed research laboratories, being co-located with industry. Indeed, this is from the launch of Studio Ulster, which Declan Keeney, who's just taking a photo of me to get me the slide in the background, happened earlier in the year. So this is a full-scale production studio in Belfast with an R&D lab built within that complex. Similarly, we have a lab at Britain's biggest campus for live event production, Production Park in Yorkshire. And they have a live lab, an R&D lab, funded by UK Research and Innovation inside that laboratory in that production campus. I think that in the future this will lead to much more exploration of where the creative industries meet architecture and the built environment. And I think the next strand of policy, I think in the UK, that we can see is moving this towards an experience economy analysis. So not just the creative industries, but where the creative industries and creative practice and technology intervenes with public space. We're seeing a lot of new spaces open like this in London. So this is Outernet, which is in London's central shopping district, and it's a kind of digital art gallery and a promotion space. And I think we'll see a lot more exciting things like that. I just warn anybody who has the clicker after me that it's eccentric. I think we'll see a lot more experiences involving the combination of technology and performance, and we can already see these things in, say, outfits like TeamLab, the Japanese design collective, with their spaces that they create, which are part gallery, part interactive experience, and part Instagram opportunity. So they're quite different from traditional museums or galleries, just as probably the thing that I think is the event. Sorry, I've got this one. So we'll see this. We do see this transformation also in museums. So the move of the museum into a more experience-based. This is the Experience Museum in Ephesus in Turkey, which is partly designed by Marshmallow Laserfeast, who are a very small UK creative company, and probably. There we go, it is actually. And probably the thing that's transformed, the single event or show that's transformed the perception of this in the UK and the opportunities for these new entertainment experiences, most of all, is of course Aber Voyage, which is in a blatant plug for our session later on this afternoon. With Ben Morris and Alicia from Stewfish. We have two of the people who contributed to creating what I think is, for anybody who's seen it, a transformational experience. So we've had 25 years of the creative industries in the UK. We've moved from recognition through to an understanding of innovation. And I think, for me, the most exciting next step in the UK is to move from the creative industries as they were when we analysed them 25 years ago, or 27 years ago, to the experience economy, which can underpin a new level of growth. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for taking us through some of the history there and queuing up so many of the themes that we're going to cover today. Great pleasure to see that Dr. Tamara Vujovic, the Minister of Culture, has arrived. Welcome. Please, can I invite you to the stand to come and give your welcome? Thank you.
Thank you, dear friends. I'm sorry I was late. You saw our roads. It is my great honor to welcome you all in behalf of Ministry of Culture and Media of Montenegro in our beautiful city of Kotor, a place rich in cultural heritage and history, interwoven with the contemporary challenges and the potential of the creative industries. Today, creative industries, creative economies represent one of the most vital sectors of the modern economy, particularly in the context of post-digital transformation, cultural diversity, and knowledge-based post-industrial development. They are recognized as a strategic area that contributes not only to the economic growth, but also to the preservation of cultural identity, inclusive development, and international cultural cooperation. Montenegro, although a small country, is intensively working on the development of this sector, recognizing potential both in domestic and international context. With its rich cultural heritage and growing creative potential, Montenegro can become a model of entrepreneurial and sustainable development based on cultural resources and contemporary creativity. And we promise to do so by adopting a joint declaration about creative economies by all ministers of culture of the Western Balkans yesterday. The European Commission and the other international institutions agree that cultural and creative economies preserve and promote cultural and linguistic diversity and strengthen European, national, regional, and local identity. At the same time, they operate globally as ambassadors of European values, which are also a core commitment of our policy. Our cooperation with the United Kingdom is of strategic importance. The British Council in Montenegro is implementing several programs that contribute to the development of creative economy sector. Podgorica Creative Encounters 2024 focuses on the digital transformation, the creation of creative hubs, and make them sustainable, and development of digital skills. The film sector, in cooperation with the Film Center of Montenegro, has promoted British experiences in stimulating the creative economy. Other Fund, Culture and Creativity for Western Balkans, is also a regional program in partnership with UNESCO and the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation, also financed by EU. This program supports creative ecosystems and strengthens our cultural cooperation. In a world where attention becomes a currency and visibility is a key capital, creative industries stand out as a space of immense social and developmental value. They not only offer new forms of expression, but also teach us how to think critically, to recognize authenticity, and to shape communities based on meaning, not statistics. Creative economies are exactly that and more than that, a space where innovation, knowledge, and culture merge into a driving force of sustainable development, personal, economic, and social. I wish you all a fruitful discussions through these days, great ideas, and a lot better weather. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the warm words, particularly on the UK-Montenegro relationship, and we really support that. We will now move on to our next session, and we will hear a case study from elsewhere in the Balkans. So I would like to welcome Claudeta Krasniqi, who is the Chief of Cabinet to the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport at the Kosovo government, who will give a case study of moving from vision to policy. Claudeta, over to you.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here and share our experience in drafting our strategy for creative economy. As Claire said, moving from vision to policy, but then what after that? So I come from the Ministry of Culture, and our scope of work covers cultural heritage, intellectual property, youth, and sports. And when we started our work 4 years ago as a new cabinet, we developed this vision that we wanted to turn youth, culture, and sports into drivers for sustainable economic and social development. And so we started a number of very deep legislative reforms, going through each of these components and trying to create the right enabling environment for these sectors to thrive. And we introduced many different institutional mechanisms and different, let's say, frameworks, working frameworks, so that we could support our community or our creatives. And beyond that, we try to implement a number of different projects and programs, including arts in schools, where we would enable very young children to really interact at a very practical level with culture activities, so that they develop a better understanding of what it meant to be a cultural worker. Beyond that, we developed these new instruments to support the cultural scene by increasing the financial support, but also designing very tailored instruments that provided them with long-term support and substantial support, so that they could become like real partners in developing programs, but also trying to focus on the young creatives and innovative projects. But what we came to understand very soon as we were going through this journey is that to transform the creative sector into a driver for development, it required a much bigger setting than just the Ministry of Culture. Because this was not just a cultural issue. It was not a matter of cultural development. It was much more. So we realized that we needed to have a much more holistic approach towards developing this topic. We came to understand that turning the creative sector into a driver for development was an equality issue. We understand that culture develops narratives and creates perspectives and perceptions, which, if we don't have the right representation, it can easily lead to erase of the diverse stories and reinforcement of certain stereotypes. And we understood that to be able to do that, we really needed to reach to those hard-to-reach groups. We all know that some of the biggest ideas have started in garages. But then for those ideas to thrive and make the change in the world, needed access to financial support, to institutional support, to knowledge and education. And this is why we truly believe that this is a public issue. It's not just a matter of the market. We really understand that this is a spatial issue because the creative activity happens in space, be it digital space or physical space. And no matter how exciting it is to have all these digital platforms to bring us together and share knowledge, we still need the right physical spaces for us to come together and co-create for places where we can trust, places we feel safe to express ourselves, and places that can help us build each other's ideas. So we understand that we need a different perspective when it comes to shaping our cities and shaping our spaces. It is a educational matter. When we were doing arts in schools, we realized, we brought together, we were piloting this project, and we realized that out of 200 children that were coming from both urban and rural areas, only 180, so only 20% actually, ever went to the theater and went backstage just to see that, there was much more than just what you see. So, and for us, it's very important to have this kind of approach towards education as well, because this is how we kind of raise that awareness that working in culture is beyond entertainment. It's a real job, which for us in our culture sometimes, we might not really think of it like that. So we came to understand that when we're talking about the creative sector and its potential, it's much more than just working with the artists or providing the right financial support or making the right policies when it comes to culture. So we kind of embraced this idea of working on a strategy that was focused on creative economy. And this was not just because we thought it was a fancy term, that was so hot at the moment, but it came to be as a necessity to develop a joint vision across the entire sectors to make sure that we were having these coordinated efforts across the different sectors, and also, based on that, build the right and effective partnerships. So we started this journey, and we're still going through it. It is sometimes a boring process, but it's a very exciting journey. And we were very lucky to use this process as also means or a platform for coordinating the different partners that we have in Kosovo. We have in this process, I'm very proud to say, all the different partners that have brought so much value to our process. And when we started having understanding that this was a cross-sectorial issue, we brought together very different sectors of the central government, the local government, and the civil society. And we set up a number of working groups. Now, we say, if you don't want to finish the job, set up working groups. However, we really tried to create the right structure so that we make sure that the work is fed by the right professionals, but that there is the right debate happening in different levels of government. Be here the leaders, but also those that have worked for more than 25 years in the administration, but also the local level, and then especially the community. So for us, it was very important that we kind of engage participants and representatives and people with the right knowledge from very, very different sectors to spark this debate. And the key principle of the process that we designed was that it had to be inclusive in every sense. And this is something that we say very often, but it's very difficult to actually reach the right level of inclusiveness. And we tried different tools, and we're still trying different tools, just to make sure that we are voicing the different needs and priorities of different sections of the community. And for this purpose, we organized different settings. And we focused on having the civil society part of the process, the business community, the locals, the diaspora, which is a very, very big resource for Kosovo, but also the different public institutions from very, very different sectors. So we used different tools to reach this point. We used a number of conferences which showed commitment from the different, at the highest level, at the highest political level, so that we can also start this discussion at the public level. We had a number of conferences very, very similar to this one, where we brought professionals from different spheres to discuss on how the creative economy could enhance Kosovo's international profile. How does creative goods and creative services stand between each other in Kosovo, but also how can they help each other grow even better, and also what the institutional role should be in this process. And then we had a number of dozens of interviews and workshops where we sat and discussed each of the issues that concern different fractions of the community with regards to the creative economy. And finally, it's these huge groups of officials where we could go back and forth and discuss the different findings from all these different activities. And we're still in the thinking process, and there are some lessons that we learn, but there are so many open questions. And do we see this as a potential for development? Absolutely, yes. I mean, earlier there were some figures mentioned. In Kosovo, in the recent study that UNDP developed, it was found that the creative sector employs around 7.9% of the labor in Kosovo. And while there is a higher percentage of female, they still don't have the right data to really show it. We see that throughout the years, the share of the contribution of this sector in GVA has changed. But now we can see that it's around 4%, which is a steady value and could grow further. So We absolutely believe that this is a sector that is the future for our community, given the high percentage of youth that we have in our population. So we said, okay, we're going to talk from vision to policy, but one of the things that we're discussing on how to best take it further is how do we go from policy to practice? How do we use the resources that we have wisely so that we can maximize the impact of our action? So this is one of the discussions that is not very easy to have, especially when you have so many different governmental sectors coming together to work and share the piece of cake, but it's a discussion that we are very much interested and focused on having. Another issue or another challenge that we see ahead ourselves is the skills gap that we face. And what we could understand throughout this process is that there is such a huge gap between what our educational system produces and then what the market needs. And the market is changing so fast while the education system is changing so slow. So how do we become creative in addressing these very immediate challenges that we have and that need addressing for us to be able to thrive in the sector? Another thing that keeps coming back is a discussion in what is creative economy? Exactly what are we talking about when we're talking about creative economy? Which sectors are there? Because we're, as an administration, we are educated to think on sectoral basis. And once it is cross-sectorial, we start wondering exactly what it means for me as culture or as trade or as economy in the government. And this is one of the topics that keeps coming back. And every time we think that we are close to defining it, a new idea comes along, and then we see that maybe it's more than that. So I think this is one of the things that is a discussion, and I think is going to continue for some time. And then finally is data. Also, data is a big discussion in every policy discussion. And what we came to understand is that we have a huge challenge in gathering the right data. We have a statistical agency that uses the system of UNCTAD and Eurostat and everything, but when we see the different institutions, we see that there is still a very low level of understanding on what creative industries are, what kind of data should be collected, how do we present this data in order for them to make sense to this process. So there is a lot of work to be done there as well. So I hope this leaves you with more open questions than answers, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Claudetta. And data, I think, will be picked up in the, the panel this morning when we look on evaluating impact. Can I just grab that before that goes? Before that, though, we will travel to another country in wider Europe. So we will go north across the Black Sea, and we will travel to Georgia, where we will hear a little bit of that experience, very much picking up on what you've just been talking about, Claudetta, in terms of taking strategy to policy and beyond. So I'd like to welcome Elena Tordze, who is the director of the Creative Clusters Alliance, and Gail Craig, who's a policy advisor to the Creative Industries Council in the UK. Gail and Elena, over to you.
Okay, hello everybody. First, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Elena. As Claire said, I'm Director of Creative Clusters Alliance of Georgia. I also work at the Goethe Institute on Creative Compass Initiative. That is like an EU-funded and Goethe Institute co-funded and implemented project to support creative economy development in Georgia.
And I'm Gail Craig. I have a kind of background in working in creative industries policy development. I worked on the development of the creative industries sector vision in the UK, which Andrew showed previously, and I've had the great pleasure of working as a kind of consultant for the British Council with Georgia.
Can I get a clicker? Sorry. Yeah. Okay, then I could just ask to change the slides. Okay, so we want to tell the story of Georgia, and to tell this, we'll just briefly mention like bits and pieces of this story. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bits and pieces of this story, because it's quite a long story, and if anyone is interested, we'll be like happy to talk more about it for these 2 days. So to tell this, we have to go back to 2016, because this is the time when everything shifted and when the when the cultural strategy of Georgia, national state strategy, was adopted. And during that time, Georgia was really like working hard towards its EU integration process, and these also, like cultural strategy, can be seen in the prism of the EU integration process, because we Georgians are always proud of our culture and creativity, and that time government just saw the opportunity to include creative industries into this whole agenda of EU integration to support the sector. So that's when everything started, and it was a starting point basically. And then it was followed by establishing a specific state agency, Creative Georgia, to support creative industries development in our country. And before that, like I worked at the Ministry of Culture, I worked on the strategy, and then I moved to Creative Georgia. And it was a really small team. In the beginning, we were just 3 people, and we basically did everything from the scratch. And when we were starting, like even the term creative industries was like, not very like famous in Georgia, and we're going in all the regions, in all the cities, talking with creatives, talking with people, and it was not easy. And it was not easy on the one hand to persuade creatives themselves that they were creatives and that they could just, turn their ideas into businesses and earn on that. And on the other hand, it was also hard to persuade policymakers, even the Ministry of Culture at that time, even though we were in their system, to get more funds, for instance, to do the research, to do the mapping, to gain the data. So we were like working on all of these. We were working on policy development, on building the capacities of creatives, on helping them to join forces and form alliances, because at that time the creative community was very scattered, very fragmented, and like they were just, being in kind of a bubbles and were not collaborating very well at the time. And when doing all of this, like we've been always cooperating and collaborating with our international partners. And I want to mention that British Council was one of the key partners from the beginning, from 2017, and they were helping us with sharing the networks, sharing the capacities, like giving us funding for developing our programs. So like all of the projects that we worked on, because of the scarce funding also from the government at that time, and it's almost always the case for the culture and creativity, we've been like fundraising and getting support from international community. And I mentioned that it was like we were really much wanting to do a mapping of creative industries to get the data and then to talk and to draw more funding and investment in the sector. And we managed to persuade UNESCO International Fund for Cultural Diversity for this, and we managed to do the creative economy study that is quite a large-scale study, and it combines 4 different directions like analysis of economic data, qualitative research of the creative sector throughout the whole country. It also includes like information about all of the legislative framework, the history of the sector, and it also includes like some part of studying the potential of internationalization of the sector. So I will just briefly share some insights from this study. So basically, creative economy is one of the large employers in Georgia. Around 9% of workforce works in creative industries. And it also pays quite a lot comparing to other sectors. And I would say that some subsectors are better in this than others. And also like GVA of the sector is 3.8%, and its growth rate is 9%, as you see on the slide. And production yearly growth rate is 11.8%, and service export rate is 27%. And the largest subsectors, so advertising is the largest subsector in Georgia by turnover, and architecture is the largest employer. And even though, like let's say, film and video is quite successful in Georgia, but it's not the largest subsector. But if you look at the growth rate, it's growing quite fast in Georgia. We can say the same for fashion design, because you see that the average growth rate in product export is quite quite high, and for digital tech, it's 88% basically. So it's also like rapidly growing. So this is just bits from this mapping. It's available in English, and if anyone is interested, like I can share anytime. So the second important direction that we've been working for like around a decade is capacity building and supporting creatives mainly in, business skills. And British Council was our key partner in this direction, and we've been supported by the Creative Spark program, and we worked on translating different toolkits, creating different toolkits, on, organizing incubation programs, trainings, masterclasses. We created also a website where we collected all of this educational information and materials to be available in Georgian language for the creative community. It was like a key part of our journey, I would say. And next direction that will just give us opportunity to also continue with the Creative Clusters Alliance. To tell the story about that is how we happen to work on creative hub spaces, alliances, and helping the sector to find spaces and helping the sector to just unite the forces. So there was a really high demand in the community to find affordable creative spaces to work, to meet. And on the other hand, there was abundance of these vacant and unused spaces. And I will just show you like several slides of the buildings from the study we funded at the time. So we had this like old Soviet era industrial buildings or cultural houses. This is just in the capital city, Tbilisi. But actually this kind of study was done in 35 municipalities last year in Georgia, and I can share if anyone is interested too by Goethe Institute. So drawing on this, we thought that it was really important and key to work on creative space hub cluster alliance development. And we had the support from the UNESCO and European Union at first for this. We created the policy paper, we created the multi-stakeholder council, and we organized lots and lots of meetings, and we brought people from like different stakeholders, people from different creative spaces and who didn't have spaces. And through all these meetings, at one of the meetings, the idea came to create some kind of association, alliance of creative spaces that could help other people in the regions of Georgia who want to create this kind of spaces to join forces and in the future to advocate for their needs and for what they wanted to do. And Gail, maybe you want to continue after this.
So, as Elena has explained, there's a huge amount of activity happening in Georgia. There's government interest for the first time, but the sector hadn't come together and recognised itself as a sector, and within that, they didn't have a unified voice or unified ask to government about what they wanted this support to look like and how they wanted support to work. So. The UK, as Andrew explained, is a world leader in creative industry policy in that we were the first to define the creative industries and industrial sector. We don't know it all and we haven't got it right, but we do have a lot of experience to share. And so that's what we worked to work alongside Elena and her team and share experience and insights and practical examples from the UK and wider European experience to support them on their journey. I think the first thing that we looked at was creating the space and time. So Elena brought together a hugely committed, passionate, incredibly smart bunch of people, but they all had day jobs to do. They were running record labels, architectural firms, creative hubs. So creating an opportunity for them to come together, for them to focus on what was important, what they wanted to articulate as a sector, really was instrumental in making progress. It's a really simple and straightforward thing to do, but it really accelerated change. We also then worked to share with them the toolkits and frameworks that exist in terms of policy development and in terms of creative economy development to just fast track, their thinking about what their ask was to crystallise their ambitions for the sector and their ask of government. And for me, as a lifelong policy official, one of the most professionally affirming moments was when a whole group of passionate creative people loved a theory of change and were hugely excited about implementing one of those. We also looked at kind of practical examples. Where have these policies been implemented before? How did that work? Who was brought together, so that if you're asking change of the Ministry of Culture or Creative Georgia, they can see exactly how that worked. Maybe adopt all of it, maybe not, but there were very kind of practical examples to point to. And then I think perhaps the most important element was that we created connections for this kind of group of passionate advocates. So I think in many ways, just like creators themselves, creative sector policy advocates can feel very isolated. And so connecting them with peers and mentors who had kind of been on that journey before, I think was enormously valuable. So through the wonder of Zoom, we beamed in a kind of series of speakers. Gillian Eason, who's with us today, shared her experience about Creative Dundee, which I think we'll all get to learn about as part of this conference. We had Professor Sarah Pepper of Cardiff University. We had, I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, I'm so sorry, Nana Radankovic, of the co-founder of Nova Iskra, the first creative hub in the Balkans, and we had kind of members of the European Creative Hub Network, all to kind of talk about the journeys that they'd been on, what they'd learned, and to share that kind of sense of connection with Elena and the group of experts that she brought together.
Thank you, Gail. So we'll just briefly say what the Creative Clusters Alliance is and what it wants to do. Basically, it's just like-minded people who want to support each other, who want to support creative community by mainly sharing the knowledge. This is the first and most important key goal of the Alliance. And then in the future to develop into the association that works on advocacy, that works on voicing up the needs of the creative community in the whole country and then in the region. So this is the ambition. And this is who we are. Right now we have like 11 organizations in 4 different locations of Georgia, and we have like different kinds of organizations. We have like typical businesses, we also have like non-profit sector representatives, and out of all of these 11, like 10 are just spaces, and 1 is the platform, like Tbilisi Architectural Biennial. So these are our members. I will not stop in detail into explaining more about the members because we don't have much time, but anytime like you can ask. So this is like art house, multifunctional space in the regional city of Gori. This is in the capital city, old former cable car that is like a contemporary art space and mediathek. This is like typical creative hub, Fabrica, and this is also in the regional city, like a studio, theater, youth theater, and yeah, these are just our members. And this is like bright group of people behind me, like not everyone from the Alliance, but most of it. And in the center also you see the Maya from the British Council of Georgia, who has been following this journey since the beginning. So yes, and Gail is there, and Becky Shoesmith, who has been also helping us in this, for this whole journey. And yeah, to sum everything up, I just wanted to go back to this timeline and to the final point, that is creative economy strategy. So in parallel with working on Creative Clusters Alliance, we've been working on creating creative economy strategy because, as I mentioned before, the sector was fragmented. We wanted to just unite everything that we've been working on before in all of these different directions, and we wanted to somehow like unite the sector too. So it was kind of an innovative approach because this is not a typical state strategy. We included like different sectors, international organizations, and not just in the process of writing, but in the process of implementing. So in the action plan, you can see that there are different directions where like private sector or how international organizations who want to do something in this can chip in and implement, I don't know, some kind of programs and actions to support creative industries. Because like, to be honest, like almost everywhere there is like funds for creative industries, and culture is never enough, so it's always good to diversify. So this was our mindset that we did the creative economy strategy around. And yes, but right now, like, the implementation of the strategy is not that rapid, I would say, because there was a shift in the policy around a year ago, then with the election. So the situation in Georgia is quite challenging right now. And yes, that's why the, I don't know, development of this direction is not that rapid as we would anticipate it to be. Gail, maybe you also wanted to say one or two words.
So, yeah, the latest engagement that we've had with Elena and the team is, so the creative economy strategy, I can say I didn't write it, Elena did. It's an incredible piece of work. It's a really all-encompassing kind of visionary long-term document, but in the current political context, implementing something that kind of requires such widespread partnership and change is really challenging and very difficult. So what we have worked to do in working with government officials, in working with Elena, in working with the British Council team, is to identify kind of practical but foundational actions within the strategy that can help the kind of development of the sector. So looking at education, looking at data, and that can kind of maintain that momentum in a kind of quiet way in a context of very significant change and challenge.
Thank you, Gail. So, and to just sum up everything briefly, today, as I said, the situation is very challenging, and situation for Creative Clusters Alliance, as whole of the creative community, as all of the independent creatives and independent organizations in Georgia, has been really hard for the last year. It was really hard also to sustain international support, and all of the programs I mentioned before have been done with the support of our international friends and communities, but right now it's getting under a lot of scrutiny, and it's really hard. But the surprise is, like, for me to see that right now, like I said, that creative community was very fragmented. Right now, creative community is the strongest, and it's a surprise for me. They are just in the forefront of all the development. I don't know, like all the processes, all the civic activism, like artists, creatives, like theaters, and the ones who couldn't join forces before, right now are the strongest, and are the key into the development of Georgia, I would say, right now. So it's a cool thing about creativity. So in the time of the challenge, they just managed to just unite forces and are stronger than ever right now.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Elena. We have tracked and collaborated with the team in Georgia on this work for over 10 years, and there's a rich amount of experience to share. Both Gail and Elena will be participating in workshops tomorrow, so if you want to delve into more detail, please do join them there. Now we will move on to our first panel. On the very critical topic of how can we effectively measure success in the creative industries, and why does it matter? Let me introduce Ian Bennett from the Fifth Sector, Gillian Eason from Creative Dundee, and Duygu Yagir from the Ministry of Trade in Turkey. We were meant to have a fourth member of this panel. Unfortunately, Dana Shaikmet from Kazakhstan, from the Creative Industries Alliance, her flight was cancelled, and so she had to get on a flight this morning. I think she's unlikely to get to the panel in time, but she will be joining us at some point later today, and she will be joining the sessions tomorrow. So we will make sure to build in the chance so you can hear from her. But Ian, over to you.
Thanks very much, and welcome to Kotor. As a native of Manchester, I know how healthy for the creative soil constant drizzle and slate grey skies are. So I'm very pleased to be here in some properly English weather. This topic sounds like the driest thing that you're going to do during your 2 days here, but I promise you that we're going to endeavour to make it more fun than you can possibly imagine when you're thinking about measuring in metrics. So don't worry, there'll be no sort of algebra on the screen. There's going to be no equations and methodology here. But what this session is really about bringing to life and making visible the different ways in which we provide evidence of how culture and creative industries can transform communities and places. And I'm really pleased to say that we've got two quite different but really complementary approaches represented in our panelists here. And basically my role here is to introduce those things, let the dialectic emerge from the conversation and shut up. So I'm going to do just that, and I'm going to invite Gillian first to talk a bit about Dundee's sort of ecosystem-driven approach, if you like, if I can characterise it that way, and how you have used qualitative insights to drive that change.
Okay, thank you. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and certainly hearing from the last two speakers as well. I just knew that just in the right place, so totally delighted by that. Creative Dundee a blog that I set up in 2008. So I appreciate there's lots of creative, countries, creative cities. I find it increasingly hard to define what Creative Dundee is. It's a network organisation. We have a mission to centre creative practitioners as powerful catalysts for collective good and citywide growth. Dundee itself is a really exceptionally different city. It's a very small city, but it's got exceptional creative density. So the creative and digital industries are by far the largest sector in terms of turnover, double the amount, for example, of tourism. We are a grassroots organisation, which I find quite interesting. I think it maybe means we're small. So there's 5 of us within the team at Creative Dundee. So that gives you a sense of scale. Over the last 10 years, I've built it to become a social enterprise and charity now. And I'll be talking more about Creative Dundee itself later. But we use data all the time. So I don't want to say that we don't use quantitative data. We rely on quantitative data. But we don't have ready access to it. And the data that we do have access to is not perfect. For example, I think we'll all know that there are just some real challenges about how the creative economy data is collated and collected. Certainly in the UK, for example, the standard industrial classification model of how you count jobs doesn't include, for example, further and higher education jobs. It doesn't, things don't count the number of creative students that make our cities and our places really vibrant. So there's lots of challenges with the data we do have. So we really prefer a more qualitative approach, which we have ready access to through our incredible community. We have ways of having a kind of rapid feedback loop with those in our community. And just by way of a couple of quick examples, we co-designed Dundee's first creative industry strategy very much with the sector, with those in the sector and those who support it at a local and kind of Scotland level. We also developed We Dundee, which was a platform that crowdsourced residents' insights into current Dundee and what they would like to see happen in future Dundee. And that led us to become, that was part of the application to become a UNESCO City of Design, but also during COVID, that was really critical for post-COVID government plans. And that was just a simple way of people sharing their kind of statements of what they would love to see happen in the future. So I think our role at Creative Dundee is as a translator, an advocate and a translator, as storytellers, so using creativity to absolutely articulate and demonstrate the impact of the creative industries. It's a big part of what we do, because I think numbers often miss the real stories.
Thank you very much. In comparison, however, our other panellists can demonstrate how important the numbers are and just how diverse the sources of numbers are and how many branches of government can be influenced by selective and precise application of those numbers. So Doigo, don't shy away from the numbers is what I'm going to say in introducing this section.
About our export numbers or other as institution numbers, thank you very much, and thank you British Council Wider Europe for inviting me such a delightful event, and being a part of this event is very great thing for me. As we have told before, Turkey now is among the top 5 countries within terms of some subcategories of the creative industries, namely especially in the content sector. According to the Economist magazine, last year's edition, Turkey is now ranking the 3rd country which is now producing the most content in the world, just after following the US and UK. And this is very important for us. And also in gaming industry, Turkey is, of course, very developing. And according to the UNCTAD's economic view report, Turkey is also among the top 5 in terms of creative goods production, and Turkey's export in creative goods production as of the year 2023 has reached to $15 billion, which is a great amount for us, and which is also having the share of 6% of our total export, which has still its own path to develop. But when we come to the global data, we see that the share of creative services is increasing more. So as Ministry of Trade, we are very closely observing both global data and local data together. So we are trying to feed our policies from both different aspects of data as well. And as she said, we are also, of course, collecting data from different ministries, from different institutions, and different sectoral associations like services export association to creative economy committees of the local cities trade organizations. We are conducting very periodic meetings and consultations with them so as to collect quantitative and qualitative data, and we also give a very tailor-made specific which is responding to the sector-specific needs, export promotions, and we are giving that export promotions on the basis of no data, no promotion. So if they support us data about their turnover, about their employment status, about their export, and then we release the export promotion to them. So we use export promotion mechanisms so as to collect the right data from the sector. It's one of our way. Of course, we are also working very closely with the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, especially their Copyrights Director General and Director General of Cinema, as well as we are working with the development agencies, which are the affiliated body of Ministry of Technology and Industry in Turkey. And we have very also important stakeholders like British Council Turkey. We are in both ways giving too much feedbacks to each other, and intellectually also they are supporting us. I can say, by the way, I would like to thank British Council Turkey for their valuable support in our policy shaping and making sometimes. So, and other types of European EU-funded projects. Now we are conducting one project. Some of my friends are here, Inspire project, which is the first creative economy-based EU-funded project. And also we studied more in depth the UK through this project, and we had a chance to visit, there. We didn't make it in Dundee, but we make it in Scotland. Yeah. So when you talk, I was thinking our very fruitful study over there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what's really fascinating about that is this is all not orchestrated by a Ministry of Culture, right? This is orchestrated from the Ministry of Trade, and I think that's a real difference from some of the other approaches that we've heard spoken about today. How do you take all those different inputs at a government level, national level, city level, Chamber of Commerce level? At what point does all that data come together and find its way into a policy document, or how does that process work?
Yeah, actually, we are. I do not want to say that Ministry of Trade is the focal point of all the creative economy, but Ministry of Trade is the only, I can say, institution that has established such a head of department. I am the head of Department of Creative Industries and Cultural Services, which is an affiliated body of Director General of Services. But of course, we have also export the Director General of Export, and they have a specific head of departments with fashion design, like industrial design. They are giving also export promotions to them. We are giving export promotions to gaming, to content industry, to digital art. We have very world-known, famous digital artists known as Refik Anadol, and that types of people. We have so many Refik Anadols, by the way, in our techno hubs and techno cities. So now we are start to support advertisement and copyrights also the sector. So Ministry of Trade has been supporting these industries as of 2010. So in a decade, of course, more than a decade, 15 years, of course, there is a kind of Ministry of Trade has turned out to be a kind of focal point for creative economy, but just within the perspective of export. We are approaching the issue. And then when the Ministry of Industry and Technology starts this INSPIRE project, thanks to the European Union, we understood that, oh my God, we have so many institutions dealing with these issues, and even we don't know each other well. Are you giving such support? Oh, we are also giving that support. But if you give that support, I give that support. I mean, and then now our presidency has established a new mechanisms, so that now we are making very economic regression analysis on our supports as well. So now I can say in 2 years' time we are sharing our data with the presidency, and the presidency is the orchestrating body of creative creative institutions, related institutions. So I can't say we are the focal point, but we turn out to be focal point, as I said to you, because we have maybe the awareness in the ministry has risen just before 15 years ago in those other institutions. But now we have very close contact with each other.
So it's a very long-term process. I mean, had Dana been able to join us, one of the really striking things that she said in our conversation before this session was the effect that the Creative Industries Association of Kazakhstan had in sort of formalizing relationships and, if you like, bringing creative businesses, to use her term, out of the shadows. And what she meant by that was that people who've been operating independently but sort of semi-officially felt confident that there was a framework in which they could register their businesses within a really well-recognized framework, and that actually results in a massive increase in the number of registered businesses from 18,000 to 43,000 in a really short space of time. But Gillian, you referred to this difficulty in a UK context. There's lots of things which aren't measured in the official stats. My constant crusade is, as the UK contingent here will know, is about freelancers. How do you balance out your messaging between that which you can collect that data on and the other kinds of information and intelligence you have about the actual makeup of the workforce in the creative economy?
Yeah. Oh, I'm on that crusade as well, Ian. So yeah, about 50% of creative economy workers in Scotland are certainly zero employee businesses, as it were. So they're not really captured at all in any of the official stats, which is incredibly frustrating for them and for us. I think if we chase the same metrics, we're going to get the same, there's that, I can't remember the quote, but chase the same metrics, going to get the same results. We're not going to change anything meaningfully. Certainly we're seeing a kind of younger generation push harder, rightly, on access, representation, mental health, fair work. And if we just pursue the big numbers, we'll never meet the needs of those people. So we're not simply pursuing, the big sectors, as it were. So I think for us, it's really important that the stats and stories are complementary. And I think the community-generated content, or the stories that we can generate, they bring the culture.
At an earlier stage in that journey, to develop an approach which takes account of regional differences and the fact that their development's at different stages.
Actually, first, the close coordination and cooperation between different institutions dealing with creative economy is the, I think, key point. After working in close relationship with Ministry of Culture and Tourism and Ministry of Industry and Technology, which has affiliated bodies in the region through development agencies, we understood lots of things we skipped. And then when we get the data, when we get the sectoral based sector specific necessities, which is like wide-ranging necessities, and then we sit down and together, and then we talk about how can we, reshape our very scarce resources to these sectoral needs. I can say we work very closely in depth to develop tailor-made sector support mechanisms. For example, I did not know that the digital artists' specific needs in terms of their use of, like AI, like generated AI technologies, their needs. And then I started give them extra, like supports when I understood that they have very, very, like specific needs. So this is the first rule. The second rule, of course, to sit down on the table together with the sector. Not only the head of the sectoral or the I can say umbrella representatives of the sector, the subsector representatives. I don't remember how many times I sit down with digital artists, with content creators. In the content creators, even for the creators, different genres. Like I made different meetings with soap opera producers, animation producers, like documentary producers and TV program format producers. Because even they are in the same subcategory, they need different support mechanisms. And they are confronting with different market access barriers in the world. So one of them is like confronting with piracy, like our TV series sector, especially, unfortunately, in the MENA region. Most of the Turkish series are being broadcasted on piracy. And the animation sector has different priorities. So this is the second thing. And the third thing, for countries like Turkey, like developing countries, we have very scarce resources, and our sources are not infinite. So different institutions should sit down on the table again. You give this support, I give this support. Oh, this is the same support? Then you give it, I will give another one. So that different types of subsectors can benefit from that scarce resources as well. And I think another two actor is very critical. We have also some connections, but not close connections with them. Ministry of Education and Ministry of Workforce, Social Security and Workforce, because they are also the main resource generating bodies, supporting bodies. Just a couple of months ago, we managed to establish a creative economy committee within the universities association, namely in YÖK in Turkey. So now we are getting very close with the university departments especially the animation for the animation sector, for the content creation sector. So these are the three main things I can recommend from
Thank you. And Gillian, just to sort of bring this to a close, because I know that we're all now waiting for coffee. You've had that practical experience of the creative economy system in Georgia. Do you have any recommendations for maybe other West Balkan nations who are also on that journey, which kind of brings together that sense of partnership and how you make that really effective?
I think in many ways we can learn lots from our Balkan friends. I mean, it's incredible to hear about, scarce resources, but it sounds so coordinated and cohesive, which is wonderful. So I think they're already on their way, absolutely. And in terms of that seat at the table that Duga mentioned, I think that's really important. I'd love to see more cross-policy implementation of culture being at the table, across education, health and well-being, and multiple other drivers. That's certainly where we've seen that, by building that case for investment, it's a driver for all those policy goals. So, yes, that's that.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't think we've got anything further to add than yes.